Good morning, my name is Josh from CyclonesOZ, and today another detailed forecast update coming your way. We're going to be talking about the Queensland rainfall situation. We've had some very heavy falls overnight with another 2 days of heavy to torrential rainfall on the forecast to the southeast. So all of that plus more coming up in today's weather forecast. If you are brand new to the channel, please consider subscribing. Your support is greatly appreciated. So we're going to start things off just recapping these weather events for the next minute, and then we'll talk about what's actually on the forecast here. You can skip around to what part of the video suits you the most with the timestamps in the description down below. So we have had some heavy falls overnight, especially around the Townsville and Charters Towers areas. In fact, accumulations have approached 150 millimeters overnight, so very wet indeed. Certainly some of the wettest August accumulations that they have received in quite a few years, and for some areas near record-breaking rainfall. Now there is a lot more on their cards. We can't be getting ahead of ourselves here. For the central coast of the Queensland down towards the Sunshine Coast, we're going to be seeing an increasing in the rainfall rates, especially between Ogmore down towards Hervey Bay on the northern extremities of the Sunshine Coast, with steady rainfall extending as far north as the Cassowary Coast and Cairns, that sort of area, including areas such as Townsville, Bowen, Mackay, Hamilton Island, then down towards Ogmore, where the rainfall will then start to really pick up throughout the afternoon and evening hours of today. You can see a very heavy stream of rainfall going to be heading in ashore between Rockhampton and Agnes Water and Gladstone throughout the course of today, impacting areas as far inland as Billawheeler, and the rainfall will, like I've said about 3 times already, really be increasing later on today. The heaviest of falls will be tonight and into early tomorrow morning for the Rockhampton area before it clears out by around sunrise for Rockhampton. Still though, heavy rainfall being reported or going to be reported around the Gladstone, Agnes Water and Bundaberg area early tomorrow morning, and the heavy rainfall sticks around there throughout Tuesday and then in towards Wednesday as well, when it finally eases off early Wednesday morning for this part of central Queensland and creeps down into the Sunshine Coast. Now the rainfall accumulations, or the rainfall rates rather, are going to be averaging around 20 to 30 millimeters an hour, sustained for up to 12 hours at a time, so some huge accumulations are expected, especially for August here. And I know that it sounds like I'm really dramatizing this event here. Well, I am, but we are still looking at the possibility of 300 millimeters coming ashore for some of these areas around Rockhampton and Agnes Water. And you can see it here on the rainfall accumulation map here. A huge amount of rainfall is expected to come through today, at least 110 millimeters of the stuff for Rockhampton, and the majority of that's going to be falling after around 4 p.m. tonight local time for Rockhampton. So high accumulations and very high rainfall rates, which could lead to flash flooding across this part of central Queensland, are expected. But if you take a look at 3-day rainfall accumulations for areas between Rockhampton down towards Maroochydore on the Sunshine Coast, there are some huge numbers here now on the forecast. Outside of Gladstone, you're looking at up to 250, potentially 300 millimeters here in the Wright Mountain Valley, depending on how the rainfall does come ashore here. Gladstone itself expecting 200 millimeters. I believe their highest daily accumulation for August is 120 millimeters. That is at risk of being toppled in this weather event here. So we're definitely talking about record-breaking rainfall for areas between Rockhampton down to the northern extremities of the Sunshine Coast. And I mean, it's penetrating inland as well. Billawheeler expecting up to 120 millimeters of the stuff. I think 50 today and then 70 tomorrow, and a little bit extra on Wednesday. Even inland towards Taroom and Roma, still up towards 50 to 80 millimeters for some of these locations here. Some big accumulations are still on the forecast. The northern tip of Fraser Island as well, expecting some decent rainfall above 100 millimeters, and the majority of the Sunshine Coast, even down towards Brisbane and the Gold Coast, expecting 100 millimeters of rainfall as well. The majority of that rainfall, however, will be Tuesday into Tuesday night and then into early Wednesday morning, which we'll talk about right now. If you do have any questions or comments about the situation between Rockhampton, Agnes Water, Gladstone, Bundaberg, that sort of area, if you've got specific questions for this area, please do let me know in the comment section down below. But certainly talking about a potential minor to moderate flooding emergency in this part of Queensland here, you need to keep an eye on the Bureau of Meteorology's weather warnings pages and the river levels and whatnot, just to make sure you are staying safe from this weather event, because we are talking about some serious flooding risks Tuesday evening into Wednesday morning, and then even potentially into Thursday morning if the rainfall keeps going through Wednesday. Now, as this rainfall does creep, or this low pressure system creeps towards the southeast, paralleling the Queensland coastline, basically, it's going to increase rainfall accumulations for the Sunshine Coast and the Gold Coast, and even into the northeastern parts of New South Wales, which, by the way, copped 125 millimeters overnight between Lismore and Cape Byron. So some huge accumulations were reported there, and they weren't particularly on the forecast. It was just sort of steady rainfall that started to amount up to some pretty serious rainfall accumulations in this part of northeastern New South Wales. Again, it's atypical for this time of the year, but it still does happen every every now and then. It certainly wasn't enough to cause a flooding emergency. However, 125 millimeters of rain definitely would have caught some people off guard. And just because of the nitty-gritty location here, with the forecast model struggling to crank out the data necessary to make a good forecast of this part of southeastern Queensland and northeastern New South Wales, they completely missed the rainfall that was on the forecast, or that actually came through there. So unfortunately, some people were very unaware that they were receiving heavy rainfall last night. From about Tuesday afternoon, the rainfall will pick up into the Sunshine Coast, and then throughout early Wednesday morning, the rainfall will continue through the Sunshine Coast and Brisbane. The showers that will stream through from about Tuesday evening through to Wednesday evening across Brisbane and especially the Gold Coast will likely amount to around 50 to 80 millimeters of rainfall for Wednesday alone to the 9 a.m. on Thursday morning. And we're also looking at some very heavy accumulations throughout Tuesday evening as well to the 9 a.m. on Wednesday morning. So I would not be surprised if accumulations amount to 80 millimeters for both Tuesday and Wednesday for parts of southeastern Queensland. Certainly some big rainfall accumulations are possible, and you can see it here on the rainfall forecast map here. Peak rainfall accumulations above 100 millimeters for a huge swathe of southeastern Queensland, including the Sunshine Coast as well. Brisbane itself expecting about 80 millimeters of rainfall. I'm going to say as a safe bet today, another 10 to 15 millimeters coming through, probably about 40 coming through on Tuesday, and then maybe about 25 on Wednesday morning to amount to that 80 millimeters. That's sort of the rainfall that I'm expecting there. Throughout Tuesday, the rainfall will be more sort of moderate rainfall, but I reckon once Wednesday rolls around, it'll be more of sort of the moderate to heavy rainfall shower type weather event. The Gold Coast will be picking up slightly more rainfall than that just because of their coastal location, and then areas into the northeastern corner of New South Wales down towards Coffs Harbour and Taree also expecting some decent rainfall accumulations as well, up to 130 millimeters of the stuff coming through on Tuesday and Wednesday. Now, of course, the rainfall across the southeast of Queensland, the northeast of New South Wales is very little in comparison to what's coming through in central Queensland, but on top of the 100 millimeters that some of these areas have also received, we could be talking about some pretty serious accumulations over the 5-day period here, up towards 200 millimeters for some of these areas. Now, that certainly is a very wet stint of rainfall for August, and that's what makes this system very unusual, is just the time of the year that it's coming through, and that is why it's got a lot of people talking about it, and a lot of people really making it up to be a big weather system, because it is. This is certainly nothing to be playing around with, and it certainly is something that you need to be taking very seriously, especially if you live in a flood-prone area. So we've hammered home rainfall timings, we've hammered home rainfall accumulations. It's now time for us to talk about other hazards associated with this threat. Of course, we've got flooding, but we've also got the wind threat here, because this is a low pressure system that resembles a tropical low in its nature, just with the volume of rainfall that it's going to be moving ashore, and with the track of it and so forth. It just does resemble a tropical low. We're going to be seeing wind gusts across the Queensland coastline, especially for areas around Fraser Island down to the Sunshine Coast and as far out as Agnes Water and Gladstone. Gusts up towards 40 or 45 knots in places across Tuesday and Wednesday. Now, these wind gusts here are going to be making shore-based activities and ocean-based activities hazardous. Certainly going to make for some pretty gusty showers blowing through, especially Tuesday night. You can see the winds where the low pressure system is associated gusting up towards 50 knots here for the Queensland coastline. That means some big waves are also going to be funneled ashore here. Wave heights up towards 3 or 4 meters for the coast, and then out to sea up towards 5, maybe even 6 meters high. So certainly some really big waves, and associated with this low pressure system comes some big swells as well. So make sure you are staying safe if you do live around the water, and I highly advise against shore-based activities such as fishing or boating for that matter on Tuesday and Wednesday. It certainly is going to be a dangerous one out on the water, so yeah, just steer clear from the water throughout Tuesday and Wednesday. Conditions should clear up a little bit, especially for the central Queensland coastline Wednesday afternoon and evening, and then clearing up again further for the later parts of this week and this weekend with the winds coming off there, so you can get your fishing fix in Thursday and Friday if the fishing seasons are open, because I know they're not open in Western Australia, but you can get a fishing or boating fix in later on this week. Just don't do it Tuesday and Wednesday, because for a rain-based weather system like this, the news is only talking about the rainfall threat here. We definitely need to make a mention of the storm surge threat, which is still minimal in a weather event like this, but considering the winds up towards 45 knots, certainly could be seeing some pretty big swells and some abnormally high tides across Queensland, and I am actually surprised that a severe weather warning hasn't been issued for that, especially for locations between Rockhampton right through the Sunshine Coast down towards Brisbane. That is a little bit of a surprise for me. But yeah, any further questions or comments on this weather event here, please do let me know in the comment section down below. I'll get back to as as many people as I can. It's certainly some very heavy rainfall here that's coming in, so make sure you do stay safe, especially if you are in a flood-prone area. Between Rockhampton and Maroochydore on the Sunshine Coast, so you've got some very heavy rainfall coming through over the coming 3 or 4 days. Tuesday and Wednesday will be the wettest of the days, but still rainfall going to be piping up pretty soon across a lot of the central Queensland coastline after lunchtime today. I reckon the rainfall will be well and truly stuck in for Rockhampton and Ogmore for the coming couple of hours. And just before we finish up on the Queensland forecast, I'd like to talk about far north Queensland. They haven't actually received much rainfall overnight, and the forecast kind of busted out for areas across the far north of Queensland, with areas, especially around Innisfail, expecting up to 100 millimetres of rainfall overnight, and they actually copped nothing. So some really significant changes in the forecast was what was driving that. The rainfall crept further south, and areas around the Townsville area picked up about twice the amount of rainfall that they were expecting overnight, up to 150 millimetres, as we talked about at the start of the video. Outside of Townsville, and that's just what happens in far north Queensland. It's not really something that we can give a perfect forecast on 100% of the time. This is an example of a bad forecast from the forecast models, and also myself to that extent here. The rainfall just crept further south, and that's why far north Queensland didn't get any of the rainfall that was actually on the forecast. Like I said, expecting up to 100 millimetres of rainfall yesterday and into early today, but the rainfall was 50 kilometres or 100 kilometres towards the south, and as such, far north Queensland copped absolutely nothing. And to an extent as well, the Daintree rainforest also copped very little amounts of rainfall, and that's just what happens when the rainfall heads further south again. I will iron out the inaccuracies in these forecasts. The forecast models can spit out a bad forecast every now and then, and this was an example of that. However, I could have seen this coming just with the way this rainfall pattern was trending. Now, it's a long-winded forecast. The eastern states, or I guess the eastern state of Australia, of Queensland, we've also got that weather event for New South Wales that we have also talked about. We're now going to take a look at the winter weather scene for the southern states and also talk about a potential thunderstorm outbreak next Friday across New South Wales and Victoria. So we'll pull this back today. You can see a weak cold front brushing up against the southwest of Western Australia that's bringing some showers and some gusty winds and some pretty cool conditions, which we're not used to because we have had a week of very nice weather across Perth, but it's still bringing those showery conditions throughout the course of today and into early tomorrow morning. We'll likely see a little bit more rainfall increasing tomorrow night for the southwest of Western Australia, coinciding with a few showers in South Australia and Victoria and down towards Tasmania, as well as another cold front impacts the southwest of Western Australia, which could bring the odd storm and some heavy showers Tuesday night into Wednesday morning for the Perth metro area and the south coast of Western Australia. Another cold front looks to sweep up from the south as well Wednesday afternoon and bring some showery conditions to the Perth metro area and the southwest of Western Australia as a whole. We're also looking at some showers across South Australia Wednesday afternoon through the Eyre Peninsula, and then into Wednesday evening for the Adelaide and the southeast of South Australia areas. Victoria also expecting a few showers to pipe up on Wednesday night into Thursday morning. Showers also for Tasmania throughout Thursday and Friday. Before Friday, this cold front here sweeps in a big pool of moisture and humid and unstable air into New South Wales and Victoria, and you can see Friday afternoon and evening we're looking at a bit of a thunderstorm outbreak across New South Wales, and this is what I want to be talking about now. The winter weather scene can wait because we do have some what looks to be some pretty widespread thunderstorms across New South Wales and even extending in towards Victoria as well. Now, they are still winter based. It's because this cold front here is sweeping down some really warm and unstable air from Queensland and South Australia and also the Northern Territory, and this warm and unstable air is not only going to lead to a pretty warm day on Friday where temperatures could approach 30 degrees in the northern parts of New South Wales, but this warm and unstable air is going to be bringing showers and storms to the inland parts of New South Wales, which could deliver some healthy rainfall accumulations as well. You can see accumulations up towards 30 millimetres from these storms and showers throughout Friday night and into early Saturday morning, with peak accumulations in the northern parts of New South Wales up towards 25 to 30 millimetres. Again, with thunderstorms, it's going to be really hit and miss and really challenging to forecast, and you're only going to get the perfect forecast on the day of the weather event, but still, just a heads up, it looks like some thunderstorms are moving into New South Wales for that time. In terms of how much energy they have, you can see here on the forecast models here, there's going to be a huge amount of energy available, or convective available potential energy. You can think of it as the fuel for thunderstorms, and when you're talking about 500 joules per kilogram of air, you're talking about some very high values, especially for August, and it's certainly going to be enough to fire out some really good thunderstorms here. I know a lot of these numbers and the colours are meaningless, but just know blue could mean low risk of thunderstorms, green more sort of a moderate to a high risk of thunderstorms. When you start talking about yellows and oranges for New South Wales, which we only see in summer, you're talking about an extreme risk for thunderstorms. But here we're looking at a high chance of thunderstorms, potentially severe as well. There's going to be enough instability in the air for some short-lived severe thunderstorms, which could drop some heavy rainfall and have some damaging winds in them. Large hailstones don't look like they're going to be overly of a threat at this time, but we could still be talking about them, especially across the northern parts of New South Wales, just considering how unstable the environment is going to be. But yeah, back to the temperatures. I mean, take a look at this. Throughout the maximum temperature for the northern parts of New South Wales on Friday, we're looking at about 26, 27 degrees Celsius, potentially up towards 30 in the southwestern corner of Queensland. So very warm indeed, especially for this time of the year. That's about 8 degrees Celsius above average for some of these locations. Definitely going to be something worth watching in terms of a thunderstorm forecast. Now that is a short winter forecast here. If you do have any questions or comments about it, please do let me know in the comment section down below. In terms of rainfall accumulations for the southern states, you can see peak accumulations across the southwest approaching 100 millimeters. That's because of a low pressure system that's going to be impacting the south coastal regions later on this week, which we'll have to talk about separately in another video because it is a big weather event, but I'm still a little bit uncertain on it and the details, so I'll abstain from giving a proper forecast just now. For South Australia, we're looking at up towards 20 to 25 millimeters across the Mount Lofty ranges outside of Adelaide. Adelaide itself expecting about 15 millimeters of rainfall. Parts of Victoria also expecting some decent rainfall over the next 10 days, up towards 15 to 20 millimeters, but as we have talked about in recent uploads, they are experiencing some really significant drought-like conditions, and it's certainly starting to become a concern now. They desperately need some really decent rainfall across Victoria to kind of quench their thirst at this point, because it is a little bit of a concern. Tasmania itself expecting some good rainfall across the west coast, and the island state as a whole also expecting at least 10 to 15 millimeters across the next 10 days. So some good rainfall. It looks like it's going to be spreading itself across the West Australian southwest and into Tasmania, and then South Australia and Victoria a little bit more hit and miss at this time. Anyway, so that is all for the forecast today. If you have enjoyed the video, then please do leave a like and also subscribe if you haven't already. A special shout out to the channel sponsors. Their names are on screen right now. I could not run this show without them, and again, their support is greatly appreciated. If I've left anything unanswered for you or your location, then please do let me know in the comments section down below. I'd love to hear from you today, and I'll get back to as many people as I can throughout the course of today. Again, thank you so much for watching the video, and I'll catch you all in the next storm. Goodbye.